Right, okay. Good day. Greetings and welcome to all of our development colleagues, and thank you for tuning in to Expand the Knowledge Base. I'm Tracy Sanchez, your moderator for the day, and I'd like you to know that DCA has a series of these webinars, and we put them on YouTube, so you can always share them with your colleagues later. So this is being recorded now, and our topic today is a deep dive on REBA and EDGE grant administration. Specifically, as you'll hear more about later, focusing on drawdown and closeout. And just to set the stage, I'm going to put the slides up and give you an idea of what a powerful tool this is today that we're using. So I'll begin sharing. And check that everyone can see that. And give me a, someone let me know if you do see the slides. We can see them. Okay, great. So this is a momentous figure, and I wanted to set the stage by sharing how important this resource is and take a look at the amount of funding that we're talking about. Now, I am in Region 3 at DCA, which is the metro region, and these are the stats from my area alone because I don't have the statewide data, but over 88 million in REBA discretionary grants between 2011 and 2023. That's a big number. I'm letting that sink in. I imagine that handling large resources might generate some anxiety, and I even feel it on my end in the compliance role after the deal's already been set. So I know that you all do, and that's why we've lined up a rockstar panel to guide you through any anxiety or just to share the lessons learned or put you off on the right foot in grant administration. So let me introduce them to you and we'll get started. Doris Coleman is compliance manager, and if you want to just give a wave to each of our panelists so folks know who you are. Doris is compliance manager for the Development Authority of Fulton County. In addition to managing the board operations there for the last 25 years, she's also managed the REBA grants for 10 years, so definitely wears two hats, and she has 12 active awards on her desk. Tim Evans is also wearing many hats, as we learn. In Hall County, he's the economic development professional, as well as the Development Authority liaison, and I think a couple of other roles, but has a very successful track record in managing both REBA and EDGE grants. Maya Jackson is the BRE, Business Retention Expansion Manager at Invest Atlanta, and she currently has a number of active awards on her desk. I think that list is pretty long. You can let us know about that when we're chatting with you, Maya. Sarah Thomas is a grants manager with Allen Smith Consulting. She's a graduate of UGA, go Dogs, and she's been with ASC for 11 years. She's been working as a liaison between the local governments and the funding agencies to administer both community and economic development grants. So a note here, there's more than one way to manage grants in your community. Perhaps if you don't have the bandwidth, you know that there are ways that you can look outside for support. And then, of course, leading the charge here today, our own guru in the REBA and EDGE discretionary grant program manager, Sharon Alexander Jackson. So I can't imagine how many awards. Sharon, I don't know how many you have on your desk. I know it's a sum total. Maybe you can share that with us. But I will moderate today and get us started so that we can move into a snapshot of the whole process, which we covered in an earlier webinar, and then what we're going to focus on today. So at this point, I'll set the slide up for Sharon. Oh, and this was just to mention to you, if you didn't know your regional rep like me in Metro Atlanta, you can find it on the DCA webpage because that person will be working with you in the compliance. So we'll start here and turn it over to Sharon to guide us.
Yes, thank you, Tracy. Hello, everyone. I'm Sharon Alexander Jackson, and I know all of you, many of you, if not all of you. We've been working on state discretionary grants, EDGE and REBA together for quite some time now. And to answer Tracy's question, I have administered in excess of 200 state discretionary awards. I don't know how many are active right now. We just, we take them as they come. And we have a lot of fun with these. The last time we met, we discussed the 9 phases of administering the state discretionary awards, REBA and EDGE, from A to Z. And this slide just illustrates what those 9 stages, the name of the 9 stages. Today, we will focus on stages or phases 7, 8, and 9, which entail the drawdown and the closeout processes. Next slide, Tracy. So phase 7 is driven by the authority. To successfully administer the drawdown request, the authority is responsible for gathering, executing, and submitting the requested documents to accomplish drawdown requests. The documents include, but are not limited to, the activity reports, financial reports, a drawdown certification, drawdown request form, and cost and payment detail. With that stated, next slide, please, Tracy. With that stated, panelists, please share some of your lessons that you've learned about phase 7. We'll start out with the first question, which is, what is the biggest pitfall that you've encountered with administering state discretionary grants regarding the drawdown of grant funds?
I'd like to begin, Sharon, if you don't mind.
Yes, Doris, please. Please do.
One of my biggest pitfalls after the PA&A and the MOU have been executed, the letter of inducement's been done, and now it's time for me to coordinate the bill of sale and the lease agreement. The client oftentimes is not ready to put together their Exhibit A, which has to be attached to their bill of sale and lease agreement. They haven't purchased their assets. And so therefore, that's going to delay processing those 2 documents. And recently in the recent years, I guess since COVID, that has been a common issue with the award recipients that I've been working with. So sometimes it takes 6 months or to a year before they are able to put together tangible assets. Sometimes they're not really sure what a tangible asset is.
Right.
So that's when we have to work closely with DCA and the state for them to help identify what the tangible assets that will be that are acceptable.
Okay, well, we appreciate that response from you, Doris. What about you, Sarah? What is the biggest pitfall that you've encountered with administering state discretionary grants?
One of the things we run into can be gathering all the documentation, backup documentation needed to show the, for example, if the grant funds are to purchase equipment. Sometimes the invoice copies the company sends us may not show a direct link with the payment, or we may not have enough to show where the equipment is located. If it's going to, the invoice may have the business's home office address rather than the location where the funds are being given. So Sharon is always so wonderful and patient with us. We usually, it takes us a few tries sometimes to send her the documentation, and she'll tell us, what we're missing and what we need to track down. But that's usually one of the hardest parts for us to get through. Now it's a lot more straightforward if the grant is funding site work or construction.
Mm-hmm.
We find that those are much easier to document.
I agree. A lot of times the site preparation and construction projects are a lot more straightforward because of the way that the invoicing occurs. But when it comes to the pitfall that you mentioned, perhaps documenting machinery and equipment, Sarah, you all have a lot of experience with these projects. So share some of the lessons you've learned and what types of things you've learn to do internally there to successfully navigate around those pitfalls to get the drawdown completed?
Well, the first thing is to start early. I mean, we start asking when, during the grant writing process, I mean, we start asking for documentation early, and often we set a lot of reminders for ourselves to continue to follow up. And another thing that we found helpful is to find a key person with the company that is responsive. Sometimes that takes a few tries. Sometimes the person we're initially working with is just, doesn't have access to what the documentation we need, or they just are not as engaged as we need them to be. And so finding that best friend at the company that we can always contact really is helpful.
I think those are two excellent tips. And so, Doris, you mentioned your biggest pitfall. So what have you put in place to navigate around that pitfall, just to keep the ability to drive the process from your desk so that the company is in the position to be reimbursed for expenses through the drawdown process?
So typically what I do is early on in the conversations, I'll put together like a preliminary progress report, just so that they can document, what their timeline is, and share that with DCA and Sharon and Tracy, so that we are all on the same page. They're totally being transparent as to what their what their preliminary timelines are with purchasing assets.
I think that's a good idea. And is there anything else that you do to set expectations with the company or the consultant for the company to further drive the drawdown process from your desk?
Well, I use the recommendation letter as a guide once we receive that, and then I work with them to try to go ahead and pull together specific documents that are typically needed by the time that they are able to pull together the list of assets and verifiable documents. So just recently, the companies that I've been dealing with are very eager to start compiling information well before it's really needed for me to submit. So I've been meeting with my company contacts on a regular basis, at least once every couple of months. So, but that progress report, I just, do a basic progress report, and we want to know how much they've invested thus far. and just to share as much information as possible and to let us know what to expect in, in a certain time period.
I hear what you're saying. So it helps to have a motivated business partner, for the business to be motivated, because they can often help drive that process as well. But it sounds like, just communicating and keep communicating with us at DCA, the status of the project, so that we can help each other administer the project based upon where it's at.
And also early on in the e-civis process, I asked those questions that are asked of us to the client to help me answer the questions. So I'm able to fill in the information in e-civis, so the timeline and the expectations are all also documented in e-civis as well.
And we appreciate that. Doris and Sarah, both of you do a good job. We'll move on to the next question, which is to overcome the pitfalls. Well, we already talked about that. The next question, number 3. As a local grant administrator, how do you drive the award administration process to facilitate drawdown of the grants? And so we'll go to Maya this time. Maya, how many grants do you have? REBA.
I feel like we're higher than 15.
Oh, wow.
That sounds about right. So with that amount of grants, they're all in different spaces. Some people have been awarded, but haven't purchased any of their assets. Like Doris mentioned, some people are in their performance period, but still haven't drawn down. Some people want to deobligate their funds. So we have a lot of different statuses that are going on. So we really try and react to the company. Some people are not ready to draw down at all, and they're just in that maintenance phase. So we make sure to continuously check in. So I have another member of my team that I work with, and we like to check in maybe once a month or once every 2 months. Hey, we have these special conditions. These are the things that we need from you. Are you all ready to draw down? So I think maintaining regular communication with the company is really good, because the way things are always changing internally, a lot of these companies have things that are changing within their staff and within their processes. So just keeping up to date with what they have going on. And then we live by Excel spreadsheets over here. So we have all of our companies list of an Excel spreadsheet, where they are in the process, what their performance period is, what goals they need to meet, and what we need to do and what we're waiting on the company. And then the last time we spoke to them or communicated with them. So heavily relying on that spreadsheet so we can just get a high overview of what's going on with all of our processes. And I love e-civis, honestly. I am like technology, like you guys, is that the first time you've heard that? I love e-civis. It helps. I'm of the digital age, the technology age. So I love that I could just go in and see what are the special conditions, what is DCA waiting on for me. And that's how I communicate with my legal team, with like our finance team. Like, this is exactly what DCA needs. Can you guys do that? So with all 3 of those combined, we just use all of those resources to keep a good relationship with the company, and then our internal processors that help us out as well.
And I think, having the right people internally, Maya, has really helped you all, your process. I mean, the counterpart that you talked about, I don't know if she's on the call, but the 2 of you together are a phenomenal team, and we've been able to accomplish a lot. And it helps that we have a regular meeting every month with Invest Atlanta to go over all of the projects and determine what next steps are. So, and last but not least, we have Tim Evans on the call, and he does a really good job in his area of driving REBA or EDGE, the state discretionary awards that have been awarded to him and his staff. And so, Tim, what do you find helps in your process to make sure that award administration happens and we are keeping companies in your area happy?
Well, it starts with the application process, and I think an appreciation that for those of you that might be new to economic development in Georgia and to the grant process, to understand that it's the way it is for a reason. The structure and all the things that DCA needs for just the documentation. It's not just to be difficult on us. They are audited by HUD and other federal agencies for their federal funds that come to DCA for all the monies that DCA distributes, including REBA and One Georgia, and just an appreciation that the things that are needed in special conditions, the documentation, that it's there to help support everything that DCA does, and that audit process when HUD is auditing the agency for all the monies.
Mm-hmm.
So the application process for us, we're a small staff. We're a Chamber of Commerce, we're managing events and membership, and our development authority has no staff, no overhead, no office. I'm technically a volunteer with the Gainesville and Hall County Development Authority. So we're very lean. It's an all volunteer organization. The grant application process is an important step for us, and GMRC, the Georgia Mountains Regional Commission, is our regional commission, and they're a partner with us in helping project manage the grant application. And we find that just having them as a partner helps mitigate issues down the road through the review process, and just having that expertise in preparing the initial application. And then when the application's submitted and the review process is returned with any needed items or special conditions at that point, then we take over and we work on the drawdown piece and any of the special conditions, of course. But I can't say enough good things about Kathy Papa. She's our regional manager for DCA, and I don't know if she's on the call, but she's fantastic. And anytime we have a question, I'll be able to reach out to Kathy and troubleshoot. And she just knows where to find the answer and help us. But I would say beyond the application, once we get into the drawdown process, one of the things that we've recognized over the years is that when you get into drawing down the funds, you do need all the documentation and special conditions answered, but you also need to have a dedicated government funds account available for those funds to come to your authority. And we have a number of accounts, but we've learned over the years that we really just need to have an account that's available that doesn't have anything else coming in and out of it at the time. We'd like to just have it dedicated for that grant, for the duration of the grant period, and the funds coming in and out. So that has occasionally we've had to open a new account to be able to handle that and manage that, and that's okay. That's just a part of the process. But opening a new account that can receive government funds takes a lot longer than it used to. The process of working with banks for that approval is quite a few weeks. It's not as quick as a normal commercial account. So we just have learned to recognize that as one of the things to add into our outlook and horizon on what we're doing for the drawdowns.
Well, I heard you mention 3 key things that are really important. The fact that that you're a lean establishment. We did not know that. We could not tell because of the caliber of work that you all do, and submitting things in a timely fashion and helping us create the business environment in Georgia that has kept us #1 for business for the past 8 years. We had no idea, but it sounds like it's good that you have access to the regional commission that help you with some of your paperwork, but also the help of an outside consultant is considered a good idea for those authorities that are able to do that. So you mentioned the separate non-interest bearing account that have to be set up to receive state discretionary funds, and the fact that it's a little tougher to open one of those nowadays sounds like it could be a pitfall. So what have you started to do, if in a couple of bullet points, to navigate the pitfall of the account?
Sure. Well, first of all, we try to look out ahead of time and see, do we have an account that's available, that we haven't had anything in it for a while, coming or going, and can we use that account? And if not, if we need to open a new account, we try to give ourselves enough time. And we're fortunate enough, and I'm sure a lot of our communities around the state have got local managers of financial institutions that can help create an account. But we're able to go to our representatives here in Gainesville for the local banking institutions and work with them to get an account open for the authority as needed. It still takes a couple of weeks, even with having somebody right here that we can pick up the phone and reach them in just minutes. But we try to give ourselves enough lead time to address opening that account.
Okay, so that's really good information to predict what you'll need, and also cultivating local relationships so that you can move forward, as expeditiously as possible to keep things, to keep driving the grant administration process. So we appreciate your input there, Tim. Next slide, Tracy.
Sharon, before we move on, I wanted to throw one thing out that I had heard about, which was the email accounts that are separate for each award. Is that anything that's troubling to set up, one for every award, knowing you might have 12 on your desk? And how do you manage that?
So Tracy is referencing the electronic platform that we use. Everyone is familiar. They've had some type of interaction with what we call GRAM, but it is administered by eCivis, who is the vendor of our grants management system. And for each application that an authority sends to DCA through the grants management system, each application has to have its own credentials. And so that requires typically a separate email for each application. And everyone here, with the exception of Tim, I think, on the panel, have had experience, establishing those email addresses to submit applications. So maybe Doris or Sarah or Maya may speak about that quickly.
Yeah, I thought I remembered Invest Atlanta having some trouble initially. Maya, if you learned anything from that?
Now we just have everybody in the loop. So our IT team and our IT consultants are pretty quick with getting those emails set up. So once we get them shipped off and set up, it's good now. I do remember the trouble initially, but now we just keep everyone in the loop, let them know exactly what we need, and they're able to get those email addresses set up for us.
And I think that's a really good point, Maya, that you bring up, because every authority has different rules about setting up emails and what emails can be tied to the business that they do. And so Maya was very familiar with their internal processes there at Invest Atlanta, and made sure she worked internally to make sure that the work that she did for her REBA application aligned with the internal process, so that she can continue to drive her grant administration or the application from where she was.
I had a similar situation when we, first discovered that we needed to set up email, a different email for each project. And so all of mine are under a Gmail account. So,
Yes.
and so I have total control over how I set up emails for each one of these projects. So it's a simple process for me. I don't have to go through our IT.
And I think that's important as well. So Doris figured out that she could use the free Gmail accounts to accomplish what she needs as far as the application piece, and it aligns with what her authority, what their protocols are internally, and so she was able to pick up there and keep things moving efficiently. So we appreciate your answers and that question, Tracy. We'll move on to the next slide. So phase 8 represents the beginning of the closeout process. Phase 8 is also driven by the authority, and the closeout process from the authority standpoint includes a final report, a company letter, and an independent audit for each draw. And once those 3 things are submitted by the authority to DCA, then the DCA regional representative, Tracy, or the regional rep for your region will call you to schedule a closeout site visit. Next slide, please. Phase 9 of the closeout process is driven by DCA. The activities include DCA will do a review of the final report and company letter and apply those outcomes against the P&A to make sure all performance standards and obligations were met. And then we draft a formal closeout letter or a conditional closeout letter, just depending on when the last draw occurred. And then we will schedule a closeout appointment with the authority. And during that appointment, DCA walks the authority through closing out the award in Graham. And so we walk with you through that process because, Graham can be a little intricate. And so we like to make sure that we are checking all the boxes and getting everything uploaded to that file so we can close it out. Next slide, please. Regarding the lessons learned, authorities, please talk about the lessons you've learned while administering phases 8 and participating in phase 9. So I like to just take a poll from our panelists, or anyone in the call who has closed an award and can discuss their experience with the closeout process. And this is more for the panelists. And the reason why we ask that is because there are 9 complete stages to administering the state discretionary awards. And if you haven't gone through all 9 of the stages, then chances are there are projects that are still open, and need to be closed. And so that's a later conversation that we can go through on a authority by authority basis, but we just want to point out that there are 9 stages, and the final stages are the closeout and include the closeout processes. So who has had experience closing out and are willing to talk about what those experiences have been?
Well, I can probably start the process. I don't know if I can remember every step off the top of my head, but when I began the closeout process, of course, we ask, I put together a template for the closeout letter for the award recipient.
Okay.
And that's how I began my process. And once they've submitted their closeout letter and like an explanation of, you know, things that were, you know, required and confirming that they've met all their requirements, then we set up a closeout visit to confirm or put, you know, lay our eyes on what they said that they actually completed.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a process that I've gone through. And then Tracy will come down or Sharon will come down and check my book, my records, to make sure that certain information is in place. And a report is submitted back to me to say, yes, you've completed, or no, we need some additional information before we can move forward.
Mm-hmm. So given the time horizon for each project performance period, next slide, Tracy, what would you say is or are the challenging aspects about closing out state discretionary awards or administering the awards from start to finish? And I think Sarah has good insight into this question.
Well, we sometimes find that once the funds have been distributed from the grant, it's a little more challenging getting the information from the company. You know, once they have the funds, they're a little less interested in staying connected. So that's something we often have a challenge with, those final reports and getting the information, the final information. We also, as Doris mentioned, we prepare a template for the company's final closeout letter. But getting that back and completed is sometimes a time, you know, it takes some time and a lot of follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that we found, once we get all of the final documents submitted, is the audit. Many times the auditor doesn't necessarily include all the information DCA wants to see, as far as breaking out the grant funds separately. And so we like to prepare a sample that covers the drawdown for each grant as it's closing, and the auditor can then review that and have all of the grant information separate, you know, and for them to review and approve as part of the audit.
Mm-hmm. Those are good examples, Sarah. Maya, with regard to the time horizon for each project performance period, sometimes those performance periods take a long time to finish. What would you say have been the challenges for you administering your REBA grants from start to finish?
Sure. So I think we had an award, Sharon, that lasted a good 10 to 12 years, maybe.
Oh, wow.
So you can think of all, I think they had a couple of extensions. You can think of all the staff turnover on our side, on their side, on DCA's side that happened. It can be really hard to keep up with. Where are they? What's needed? Who have we talked to? So I think that's one big challenge for us is just maintaining communication through all parties and staying abreast of what the last update is or what is the most recent development to happen in the case. So that's why it's really, really important to have good storage, good filing system, and making sure you're not the only one on your team who knows what's going on, that there are other people on your legal team, on your finance team, on your IT team, you know, your supervisor or whoever reports to you, that they know where's this case in its status, what needs to be done, what are the next steps. So I find the more I communicate outwards with the people around me, the easier it is to get things done and to get things processed, because they can jump in whenever they need to because they already know what's going on. So I think just that overall timeline, making sure everyone is in the loop is most important.
Mm-hmm. I think that's excellent. That's an excellent approach. So I'm moving on to the last question, and this will start out with Tim. Please discuss one best practice, and this is for everyone. We're starting out with Tim, though. Starting off with Tim, please discuss one best practice that you've implemented that you feel is a really good approach that you can share with other development authorities that has helped you administer your state discretionary awards from start to finish.
Well, it's hard to narrow it down just to one. Since I already mentioned, having your team in place, and trying to use the same consistent team if you can, just for consistency. I'll add to that I really feel that if you can keep things moving and be as responsive as you you have to nudge the company a lot of times to keep it moving. Through the application process, then through the drawdown process, the fewer times that Sharon and colleagues have to touch your application, the better. The better job you do at getting it complete and then responding quickly, it avoids the situation. We're all humans. If you have to put something down and wait a month or 2 months before you come back to it because there's been a delay, you've got to go reopen the file and remember what happened. And that just adds to the processing time. So being as quick and responsive when those additional requested items come back is key. I could probably add a couple of others to that, but I'll pass it on to some others to answer.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim. Doris, name one your favorite best practice or a best practice that you've implemented that has been the most valuable in helping you administer your REBA grants from start to finish?
Well, from the start, I'm going to say I created a eCivis Word document.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, for each project, I put in their particular information. So when I get a new REBA grant applicant,
Mm-hmm.
I send them a copy of the whole eCivis questionnaire and let them help me fill in the information instead of me creating the information.
Mm-hmm.
And when they have questions about it, they can just ask me and fill it in. So by the time they send it back to me, I'm just cutting and pasting it to upload into the system.
Mm-hmm.
That has helped me tremendously. Instead of me trying to read the PA&A and figure out what sections need to go into the eCivis document and explain all the ins and outs of the company that I'm not that familiar
with, right?
So that's one thing that I did. Don't ask me how I did it, but
I've seen examples when they come through, so I know that you've done that, and we love those P&As, don't we?
Yeah.
Sarah, what's your best practice? One that you can share that you think could help one of the other grant administrators through their
I think
processes.
just having a system of reminders, whether that be digital reminders or setting alarms or setting up a paper. I mean, I like paper, and I have a paper file that we look at daily. Each day we look and see, okay, what project needs attention today and what do we need to do today. It just helps, to set reminders for each
And
stage.
we can tell that you have really good reminders set, because your submissions and the way that your documents come through are very timely and align with what needs to be done for each one of your projects. So, and Maya, last but not least, I would like to just say Maya, I think is the newest person to REBA on this panel, and she had condensed her learning curve to less than a month. I mean, I'm not being facetious, because a lot of things came her way that she had to whittle down and make sense of in a very short period of time. And she did that and then some. So I know you have a best practice that you can share with others who want to be like you.
Yes, I think a year ago, if you would have asked me what REBA was, I couldn't even tell you what those 4 letters stand for. Sometimes I still forget. So yes, thank you, Sharon. But I think what's really helped me is giving a weekly or biweekly report to our team about REBA. So it might seem kind of opposite, but having to report out and let everybody know what are the updates, what are the items, helps with accountability, because they're checking on you like, hey, what do you need for this? Or when is this due? So giving that weekly report to our wider economic development team and our president is super helpful, because everyone can see what's going on. It's very transparent. And it helps us all leverage relationships and push the items forward.
I also
like,
a
yes.
great relationship with our legal team. So if the attorneys from the company contact my legal team, they send me a heads up. Hey, what's going on with this particular project? These people want to meet. We don't want to do anything without you. So what do you recommend? How do you recommend we move forward with this request to talk about next steps for this particular REBA? So
Yes.
I'm totally engaged with our legal team.
That's true. You do have a really excellent relationship with your legal team, and I think it's good that you all distinguish between how you communicate internally about REBA and how you communicate externally about REBA to drive expectations so that you are successful at your grant administration. So we appreciate here at DCA, we appreciate all of you and the input and the insights that you shared with us today. That's all I have. And so we can open the floor for any questions that that are out there.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat, but feel free to unmute yourselves and ask any questions. And in the meantime, I'll put up a takeaway slide. Kind of took some notes today on the best tips I heard, and I'll put that on the screen. And if you guys have anything to add to it, so let's see. So I've got 12 so far. Came across the board. Just review them real quick. Start early. Find your best friend at the agency. Learn to love eCivis. Thank you, Maya. Open those bank accounts early. Use a template at closeout. Know that when the money is spent, you may have to chase them down. Audits don't always break down the funds separately. Keep your whole team up to date during the 5-year grant period. A team spreadsheet of all the grants underway is key, especially for those of you managing, dozens. Calendar reminders for all stages of the grant, whether it's paper or digital. Weekly report ins equals accountability, and a good rapport with your own legal team and IT departments.
Those are all really, I think, amazing tips and all appropriate for driving the processes.
And Sharon, let me add one thing to that last point. One thing, practice that we have learned in working with projects where there is often not just a REBA or One Georgia grant involved, but there may also be local property tax abatement and a pilot schedule involved, is to sit down with the company and your authority council and discuss a schedule for those actions, because the timing could be quite different between the grant process and the pilot related to a property tax abatement. If a project has 18 months to 2 years of construction and the assets won't actually be on the ground for 2 or 3 years for the property tax benefits, that can drive the timing of a bonds for title, bond documentation, and lease agreement for the pilot that may require you to look at separating the transaction of the grant from the pilot agreement and doing separate agreements. And we've just found that timing discussion, it's better to establish that early on so that you plan for it.
Yes, and I think that's a really important point, and it is the reason why it's important for the grant administrators to understand how the projects are structured and what the local objectives are versus state discretionary objectives. And a lot of times, even though they overlap, they can be very different. And so understanding those differences or the commonalities of them are an important aspect of administering the award. So yes, we appreciate you talking about that, Tim.
Sharon, I have one other thing that comes to mind, and this will just be a bonus question for everyone who's stuck around so far. Occasionally it doesn't go well, and there's a organization, a company that doesn't meet the thresholds or performance thresholds, and so DCA has to take some steps. Any sort of high level thoughts on what happens at that moment so that the grant administrators know, when they get that curveball?
Yeah, so I think it's really important, like Sarah said, and Doris and Tim and Maya, all of our panelists mentioned, just having reminders and internal triggers set for following up on projects and keeping in touch with whoever your contacts are in the company, so that if things were to go south with regard to our projects, we have that information early on, and you're able to contact us here at DCA to find out what next steps should be, so we can advise about next steps and what you all need to do as the person, our partner closest to the project, for just kind of identifying where our assets are or securing our assets and asking all the right questions to really determine, what's really happening in real time.
Another
So
thing,
communication is key.
absolutely. In that same vein, Sharon, one other thing I wanted to mention is that sometimes these projects are assigned independent consultants from different consulting firms, and you don't necessarily have a contact with the company. You only have the consultant, and sometimes there's a little bit of disconnect when you're not able to get information that you need, or you're not able to get responses as quickly as you need. So don't feel like you're alone, because it happens. but don't also make sure you reach out to DCA and the legal team over at the state to let them know that you're having, issues with communication. Don't just, don't give up. Just reach out and let them know so that we can help each other obtain contact information directly with the company.
I am so glad you talked about that, Doris. It is important to point that out. Sometimes, your company contact, there's turnover inside the company and you lose contact with that one person there, or if there's a consultant hired by the company to administer the grant from the company's perspective, but they're not as responsive as you need them to be timely with your administration, absolutely reach out to us here at DCA. We reach out to our sister agency, GDED. We're always here to work as in partnership with you to, keep up with the projects that we share.
And I'd love to give Sarah a chance to chime in as a consultant who is usually contracted on the development authority side, not the business endeavor. If there's any advice you have, because I know you're working in 6 or 7 counties, so I know you're getting it right, and I know you're available to them.
Yeah, as Doris said, it's sometimes necessary to reach out multiple times to especially if there is a consultant involved. It can take extra time because the consultant has to then go to their company contact. So we just have to build in extra time for everything. When there's a consultant involved, it just draws the process out of gathering that information and getting the information we need back.
I've even had one company that initially hired a consultant, and the consultant set up a meeting with me to go over the process, and they invited one person from the company to chime in, to listen in on the conversation. By the time the meeting was over, the consultant sent me an email saying, "I'm going to be your point of contact. I believe," he said, I quote, "I believe that the consultant is going to delay our process, and I want you to have information firsthand from me. So you'll be dealing with me directly and not the consultant." And I was like,
something?
Amen to that.
Yes. We do try to establish a relationship with someone at the company early on at the kickoff. Once the grant is awarded and we have that first kickoff meeting, we try to engage someone from the company at that point. And sometimes that will happen, and it does help the process.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that happen more than a couple of times where the company is like, no, just deal directly with us because we want to keep things moving along. So every project's different. That's our saying here. Every project's different.
That
Well,
is
y'all-
so.
Y'all, we are at time, so I want to be respectful of that and thank you all for your participation today. I mentioned earlier this is recorded. It'll be on YouTube, and in the comment section of the video, I will be sure to list all of your names and email contacts as panelists in case anybody wants to follow up on some of those helpful hints that you all generated today. I think we probably came up with 15 in the end. So thank you so much, and I'll be happy to share this with all the attendees.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Have a good day.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.